Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the ESS Prometheus, watching as the massive structure of the Galactic Council's central station grew larger against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. After centuries of watching the skies, humanity had finally been invited to join galactic civilization. The price of admission, however, was yet to be determined. Incoming transmission from the Council Welcome Committee, announced the ship's eye. They're requesting our technological assessment package. Sarah straightened her uniform, a habit from her years in Earth's Space Force. Send them the approved files, ARA. Let's see how they react to our selective disclosure. The Council Station was a marvel of engineering, a twisted spiral of crystalline structures and energy fields that seemed to defy physics itself. As the Prometheus approached its designated docking port, Sarah could see ships from dozens of other species, some organic, some mechanical, and some that defied easy classification. "Assessment package received," came the reply, tinged with what Sarah's xenolinguistic training suggested was surprise. "The Council notes that your civilization has achieved remarkable progress in certain areas while remaining primitive in others." Sarah smiled. That was exactly the reaction they'd hoped for. Earth's intelligence services had spent years studying the Council's pattern of technological exploitation. Species after species had been ensnared by predatory development agreements, forced to accept crippling terms in exchange for technological advancement. The Prometheus docked with a soft shudder. Sarah led her team through the airlock, each member wearing what appeared to be crude environmental suits. The Council representatives waiting for them were a diverse group, towering energy beings contained in crystalline matrices, silicon-based life forms that clicked and chittered, and what appeared to be a collective of floating orbs connected by streams of light. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," announced the largest energy being, its voice translated through their suits' speakers. "I am High Administrator Zixtal. We have reviewed your civilization's development status and are prepared to offer humanity a comprehensive technological assistance package." Sarah bowed slightly, playing the role of an odd representative of a primitive species. "We are honored by your generosity, High Administrator. Earth looks forward to learning from the Council's wisdom." The meeting chamber they were led to was clearly designed to intimidate. A vast space with a ceiling that seemed to show real-time views of every member species' home system. The human delegation was seated at a lower level, while the Council members loomed above them on floating platforms. "Your species has shown remarkable adaptability," Zixtal began, "but your technological base is concerning. Your propulsion systems are inefficient, your energy generation primitive. We can offer improvements, of course, but such assistance requires guarantees." Sarah noticed how the other Council members shifted at those words, some emitting patterns of light that her suit's sensors tagged as amusement. They'd seen this performance before, watched as species after species signed away their resources and sovereignty in exchange for technological trinkets. "These guarantees," Sarah asked carefully, "would they involve oversight of our industrial development?" "Merely to ensure safety standards are met." Another Council member chimed in, this one a collective of silicon crystals. "We would hate to see your species harm itself through improper implementation." Sarah nodded, keeping her expression neutral even as her suit's hidden quantum processors recorded every word, every energy signature, every subtle reaction. The real environmental suits were safely stored aboard the Prometheus. These suits, despite their crude appearance, were packed with the most advanced sensing and computing technology humanity had developed. "And the cost of this oversight?" she asked. "A mere 30% of your system's resource output," Zixtal said magnanimously. "A small price for ensuring your species' safe development." Sarah allowed herself to look overwhelmed, watching as the Council members exchanged satisfied glances. They thought they were watching another primitive species walk into their trap. They didn't realize they were the ones being studied. "We will, of course, need time to consider such a generous offer," Sarah said, her words careful and measured. "Our leadership will want to review the terms in detail." Of course," Zixtal agreed, radiating what Sarah's suits tagged as smug satisfaction. "Take all the time you need. The Council is always patient with developing species." And Sarah kept her voice neutral, though her suit detected the mixture of shame and resignation in his energy patterns. "We accept the justice of our situation. Our resources and technology will be used to repair the damage we caused. Though I must ask, how long had humanity planned this?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "From the moment we detected your first probe entering our system. We saw how you trapped other species, studied your patterns, and decided to play along until we could help everyone break free." The former High Administrator's energy form flickered. "But the technological limitations we observed, your primitive drives, your basic energy systems, were exactly what we wanted you to see." Sarah finished. "Earth has had quantum computing for decades. We just made sure to develop it in ways your scanning systems wouldn't recognize. Every primitive environmental suit was a Trojan horse, gathering data and spreading quantum infiltration protocols through your networks. Around them, the chamber hummed with activity as representatives from formerly suppressed species worked together, sharing knowledge that had been denied to them for generations. The Methane Collective's advanced propulsion theories complemented the Silicon Concordat's energy manipulation techniques. The Archivians' quantum computation methods merged seamlessly with human AI systems. "We never needed your technology," Sarah continued, watching Zixtel's reaction. "What we needed was to free everyone you'd enslaved through debt and false treaties. Humanity just provided the key that unlocked everyone's chains." A group of silicon-based beings approached, their crystalline forms now glowing with unleashed potential. "The combined research teams have finished analyzing the old Council's suppression protocols," one announced. "The amount of scientific progress they deliberately hindered, it's staggering. But now we can move forward," Sarah replied. "Together, as equals." She turned to face the assembled delegates, her voice carrying across the chamber. The galaxy was stagnating under the old system. Progress was measured not by innovation or cooperation, but by how effectively one species could control another. That ends today. The chamber's displays shifted, showing the rapid advancement of formerly suppressed civilizations. Worlds that had been trapped in artificial technological dark ages were awakening, their potential finally unleashed. "Humanity didn't come to the stars looking for power," Sarah continued. "We came looking for partners. And now that the chains are broken, we can all reach for the future together." The artificial sky above them sparkled with new connections forming between civilizations. The old hierarchy was gone, replaced by a network of equals sharing knowledge and resources freely. It wasn't perfect. Centuries of exploitation couldn't be undone in a month. But it was a start. "Commander," Araya's voice came through her suit's private channel. "Earth Command reports that the last of the old Council's automated defense systems have been reprogrammed. The galaxy is truly free." Sarah smiled, watching as former oppressors and oppressed worked side by side to build something new. Humanity had indeed changed the galaxy, not through superior force or technology, but by understanding that true strength comes from lifting others up rather than holding them down. The age of exploitation was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And it had all started because humanity had chosen to appear weak while gathering the strength to break everyone's chains. As she watched the former council members working alongside those they had once suppressed, Sarah reflected that perhaps this was humanity's greatest achievement, not the technological feat of outsmarting the council, but the diplomatic victory of turning enemies into partners. The stars above seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were celebrating the dawn of a new era in galactic history. "Private channel established," Araya reported. "The Archivians confirm that they've located the original legal codices. They're encoded in quantum crystalline structures predating the current council leadership." Sarah watched as Marcus continued his bumbling act in the archives, seemingly fascinated by basic historical documents, while his suit's systems interfaced with hidden Archivian transmitters. The ancient laws of the Council, written when it was truly meant to guide and protect developing species, would prove to be the key to its undoing. "Tell Earth Command we're proceeding to Phase 3, Sarah vocalized, "and inform our allies among the exploited species that the evidence gathering is almost complete. Soon, they'll understand why humans insisted on wearing our own environmental suits instead of accepting Council-approved models." Above her, the station's artificial sky displayed the positions of every Council member's home system, a grand illustration of their power and influence. Sarah wondered how that sky would look once humanity exposed the truth of how that power had been obtained. The Council thought they were watching primitive humans fumble their way through galactic politics. They didn't realize they were watching the most elaborate sting operation in human history unfold. The blade was hidden, and it was about to strike. The Council's Grand Assembly Hall hummed with energy as representatives from 200 species gathered for the annual Resource Allocation Summit. Sarah Chen stood at the back of the human delegation, watching as High Administrator Zixtal materialized at the central podium, his energy form particularly bright with anticipation. "We gather today to celebrate progress," Zixtal announced, his thoughts translated across all frequencies, particularly the successful integration of new species into our grand coalition. "The humans of Earth have shown remarkable adaptability in accepting our guidance." Sarah kept her expression neutral as murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. Her suit's sensors captured every reaction, every subtle energy shift. After 6 months of preparation, everything was in place. Now they just needed the Council to make their move. "In recognition of humanity's cooperation," Zixtal continued, "we are prepared to offer an expanded technological assistance package. Our surveys indicate Earth's system contains substantial resources that, properly managed under Council oversight, could accelerate human development by centuries." Right on schedule, Sarah thought. She stepped forward, playing her role as the grateful primitive. "The Council's generosity overwhelms us," she said, her voice carrying the precise mix of awe and eagerness their cultural models had predicted would appeal to the Council's sense of superiority. The terms appeared on the massive holographic display, a comprehensive technology transfer agreement that would give humanity access to advanced drive systems, energy generation, and material science. All it would cost was 60% of Earth's resource output and complete Council oversight of human industrial development. "A most generous offer," Sarah said, letting her voice tremble slightly. "However, according to Council law, such significant agreements must be recorded in the ancient formats. For posterity's sake." She felt the shift in the room's energy. The ancient formats were rarely invoked. Most species didn't even know they existed, but the Council couldn't refuse without violating their own most fundamental laws. "An unusual request," Zixtal said carefully, his energy form flickering with what Sarah's systems tagged as unease. "The ancient formats are quite complex. Perhaps a standard recording would suffice." "Oh, but we've been studying the old ways," Sarah replied, gesturing to Dr. Wong, who stepped forward with what appeared to be a crude attempt at a quantum crystalline matrix. "We find your history fascinating. Did you know the ancient formats require all terms to be expressed in original legal syntax?" The assembly hall grew very quiet. Sarah's suit detected massive spikes in private communication frequencies as Council members frantically consulted with each other. The original legal syntax was the foundation of Council law, and the one thing their translation matrices couldn't distort. "A commendable dedication to tradition," Zixtal said finally, his form stabilizing with what seemed like renewed confidence. "Very well. We shall record the agreement in the ancient formats." Perfect. They'd taken the bait. Dr. Wong shuffled forward, his environmental suit making him look clumsy as he approached the central podium. The crystalline matrix he carried looked primitive, barely functional. The Council members watched with barely concealed amusement as he placed it on the recording platform. The matrix activated, its structure aligning with the Council's systems. To most observers, it appeared to be struggling to interface with the advanced technology. In reality, it was executing the most sophisticated hack in human history. "Beginning recording." Wang announced, his voice appropriately nervous, converting to original legal syntax. The agreement's terms began appearing in the ancient language of the Council's founders. Sarah watched as Zixtal's energy form pulsed with satisfaction. He thought they were simply following an obscure tradition. He didn't realize that by allowing this recording, he was activating protocols that had laid dormant for millennia. Article 1. Wang read aloud, regarding the exchange of technological knowledge for resource rights. His voice droned on, seemingly reading a direct translation of the Council's terms. But Sarah's suit picked up the subtle quantum fluctuations in the crystalline matrix. With each word, it was weaving the Council's own laws into a trap they wouldn't see until it was too late. The same protocols they used to bind countless species were being turned back on them, hidden in plain sight within the ancient formats. Around the hall, Sarah noticed representatives from other exploited species watching intently. The Archivians, the Silicum Concordat, the Methane Collective, all of them had played their parts perfectly, providing crucial pieces of information while maintaining the illusion of submission to Council authority. Recording complete, Wang announced finally, sealed in accordance with ancient law. The crystalline matrix pulsed once, transmitting its contents through the Council's own networks. In that moment, Sarah knew they'd succeeded. The trap was set, locked in place by the Council's most sacred protocols. "We look forward to beginning this new era of cooperation," Sarah said, bowing deeply to hide her smile. Earth is truly grateful for the Council's guidance. Above them, the artificial sky continued its display of Council power, unaware that the greatest shift in galactic politics in 10,000 years had just been quietly encoded into law. Now they just had to wait for the right moment to activate it. The web was woven. Soon it would be time for the spider to reveal itself. The day the Galactic Council's power structure collapsed began like any other. Sarah Chen stood in the station's diplomatic quarter, watching Council members hurry past her with their usual mix of condescension and disinterest. None of them noticed that every human environmental suit on the station had been running at full power for the last 24 hours. Final confirmation received from Earth Command. ARI whispered through her private channel. All Council member systems report their automated defense networks are operating normally. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Operating normally meant the Council's vast network of automated defenders had been completely compromised. Earth's quantum infiltration protocols, hidden in the seemingly primitive systems they'd been using for the past year, had finally finished their work. "Commander," Dr. Wang's voice came through her comm. "The Archivian representatives are in position. They've confirmed the presence of all major Council leaders in the emergency session." Perfect. The Council had called the emergency meeting to discuss disturbing patterns of technological advancement among several subject species. They'd finally noticed that something was wrong, but they were looking in exactly the wrong direction. "Begin Phase 4, Sarah vocalized, making her way toward the Council chambers. "Execute on my mark." The massive doors of the emergency session chamber parted before her, revealing a scene of barely contained chaos. Council members from dozens of species flew, floated, or stalked about in agitation. The chamber's holographic displays showed data streams from across Council space, reports of subject species beginning to implement technologies that should have been far beyond their capabilities. High Administrator Zixtal's energy form blazed at the central podium. "Order. We will have order." His translated voice boomed across the chamber. "These technological anomalies must be addressed immediately. The safety of the galaxy is at stake." Sarah took her designated position among the primitive species section, noting how the other exploited races were carefully maintaining their appearances of confusion and concern. The Council had no idea they were all acting in concert. "We have confirmed reports," a Silicum-based Council member announced, "of Class 3 civilizations accessing Class 1 energy technologies. The containment protocols are failing." "Impossible," another Council member chittered. "The translation matrices are absolute. They cannot access the restricted knowledge." Sarah stood, her movement drawing all eyes in the chamber. Perhaps, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner, we should consult the ancient formats. After all, they are the foundation of council law. The chamber grew still. In the years since humanity had insisted on recording their technology exchange agreement in the ancient formats, dozens of other species had done the same. The council had dismissed it as primitive species imitating humanity's quaint obsession with tradition. The ancient formats are not relevant to this emergency, Zixtal declared, his energy form pulsing with irritation. We must focus on containing this technological contamination. Actually, Sarah said, triggering the quantum processors hidden in her suit. According to original legal syntax, they're exactly what we need to discuss. The chamber's holographic systems suddenly shifted, displaying ancient text that hadn't been seen in millennia. The council members froze as their own forgotten laws appeared before them. Article 7 of the Founding Protocols, Sarah read aloud, her suit providing perfect translation, clearly states that any species capable of independently accessing and interpreting the ancient formats is, by definition, a Class 1 civilization. Absurd. Zixtal thundered. Your species only learned of the ancient formats through our guidance. Did we? Sarah asked quietly. Or did we allow you to believe that? Just as we allowed you to believe our environmental suits were primitive life support systems, when they were actually quantum supercomputers gathering evidence of systematic exploitation. The chamber erupted in chaos as Sarah's suit began broadcasting proof. Thousands of recorded conversations, decoded documents, and financial transactions showing how the Council had deliberately suppressed technological development across hundreds of worlds. But more importantly, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the pandemonium, the ancient formats contain a very specific clause about technological suppression. A clause that, when activated by a Class 1 civilization, immediately nullifies all restrictive treaties. You can't. Zixtal began, but his voice faltered as the station's systems began responding to new commands. We can, Sarah said firmly. Every species you exploited has spent the past year recording their agreements in the ancient formats. Each recording contained hidden quantum triggers, waiting to be activated. And now, by the Council's own most sacred laws, all those agreements are null and void. The chamber's artificial sky flickered as the station's control systems transferred to new protocols. Outside, the vast automated defense network that had helped keep subject species in line was being reprogrammed, its loyalty shifting to a new coalition of freed civilizations. Humanity never needed your technology, Sarah announced to the stunned council. What we needed was proof of your crimes, recorded in a format you couldn't deny or alter. Thank you for being so helpful in providing it. The trap had sprung. The Council's web of control, built over thousands of years, was unraveling in minutes, and it had all been done completely legally, using their own most sacred laws against them. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of environmental suits throughout the station, each one continuing to record as history was made. 1 month after what historians would later call the Silent Revolution, Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt council chambers, watching representatives from across the galaxy work to forge a new future. The old council members had been stripped of their power, their manipulative practices exposed through the very records they'd kept in their precious ancient formats. The Transitional Committee has finished reviewing the technology sharing proposals, Dr. Wong reported, no longer playing the role of a bumbling academic. His environmental suit, like all human suits now, displayed its true capabilities openly, a marvel of quantum engineering that had helped orchestrate the Council's downfall. And, Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from her suit's feeds, 17 formerly suppressed species have already achieved Class 2 status, now that the artificial barriers have been removed. The Archivians estimate another 30 will reach that level within a standard year. Sarah nodded, watching as delegates from dozens of species collaborated on new governance protocols. The chamber's artificial sky no longer displayed a hierarchy of systems. Instead, It showed a web of connections, highlighting the growing networks of cooperation between formerly oppressed civilizations. Commander Chen, a familiar energy form, approached Zixtel, though his presence was greatly diminished now. The former council leadership has finished reviewing the terms of our rehabilitation. As Sarah led her team back to the Prometheus, she could feel the council's dismissive amusement following them. Let them think humanity was just another primitive civilization to be exploited. They would learn too late that they should have looked more closely at those crude environmental suits, should have wondered why Earth's technological development seemed so uneven. The trap had been baited. Now it was time to spring it. 3 months into the technological assessment period, and the Galactic Council still hadn't realized they were being played. Sarah Chen watched from her temporary quarters on the council station as another delegation of primitive humans arrived, their environmental suits marking them as easy targets for the council's predatory assistance programs. Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's leading xenorchaeologist, shuffled awkwardly in his suit as council members guided him toward the archives section. To the watching aliens, he appeared overwhelmed by the grandeur of their civilization. In reality, the quantum processors in his suit were mapping every detail of the archive's security systems. Fascinating architecture, Marcus mumbled, playing up his academic awkwardness. The crystalline matrices seemed to respond to thought patterns. The Archive Guardian, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate framework, pulsed with what Sarah's cultural database tagged as patronizing amusement. Indeed, though such advanced interfaces are far beyond your species' current capabilities. For now, you may access the basic historical records through our simplified terminals. Sarah watched the feed from Marcus's suit cameras as he was led to a lower-level access point. The Council's arrogance was their weakness. They never wondered why Earth kept sending researchers to study their simplified systems instead of immediately accepting their technological assistance package. Commander, Aria's voice whispered through her suit's private channel. Dr. Wong's systems have successfully mapped 60% of the archive's quantum encryption patterns. Estimated time to full penetration, 3 days. Sarah acknowledged with a subtle hand gesture, maintaining her appearance of watching the station's busy central atrium. The council species moved about their business, none of them paying attention to the seemingly primitive human in her environment suit. They'd grown used to her presence, dismissing her as another representative of a species too young to matter. Their mistake. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Aria announced privately. The Council's inspection team has completed their survey of our solar system's resources. Let me guess, Sarah vocalized. They found exactly what we wanted them to find. Affirmative. Their sensors detected the artificial resource signatures our satellites generated. They believe Earth's system contains 3 times the valuable minerals we actually possess. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Council's greed would be their undoing. They'd already begun drafting more extensive development assistance proposals, eager to sink their claws deeper into humanity's supposed riches. A group of silicon-based council members clicked past her observation point, their crystalline forms refracting light in complex patterns. Sarah's suit automatically recorded and analyzed their communication frequencies. After 3 months, they'd mapped nearly every species' private channels, conversations the council members thought were secure from primitive human technology. The human delegation has requested access to the historical legal records, one crystal being vibrated to another. Amusing. They'd probably hoped to find precedent for negotiating better terms. Let them search, another chimed. The translation matrices are programmed to obscure any potentially problematic sections. They'll only see what we want them to see. Sarah kept her expression neutral even as her suit's processors tagged and archived the conversation. The Council didn't realize that Earth had cracked their translation protocols within weeks of arrival. Every simplified document they provided was being retranslated through quantum algorithms that revealed the hidden meanings. Commander, Arai interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Wong has made contact with the Archivian delegation. The Archivians were one of the few council species who seemed uncomfortable with the exploitation of developing civilizations. Their own history of technological development had been surprisingly similar to humanity's, though they'd arrived at the council's door too trusting and too late to avoid entrapment.